I'm Dan Fitzpatrick at Stock Market Mentor on Monday, August 13th. Today, let's take a quick look at Chipotle. This is one that I've covered from time to time in this venue. And here, I want to talk about identifying bottoms. Before you look and say, like, okay, well, I mean, it's obvious you want to buy right on the day. Right in the morning of this day is when you want to buy. And when you want to sell is right up here at the top of the day at precisely 307.28, right? That requires a flux capacitor to do that. You can't trade the chart. You have to trade the right edge of it, the part that's in white right now. When you, though, are trying to find these bottoms, you have to first start at the weekly chart. And here, it's pretty evident. You see what happened. The 200-day or the 40-week moving average here got absolutely obliterated on one big nasty week. You know, a lot of that was a gap, but we're looking at the weekly chart here. We don't care about gaps. What we care about is the fact that at the beginning of the week, the price started there. At the end, it was down there. And prior to that, this had been under distribution. Okay, we know all that. So you're looking and saying, okay, well, I'm going to see if I can pick a bottom here. And you're seeing that this is what it's looking like here. So you decide that you want to identify a bottom, but before you even do that, you know, that's fine for a short-term trade, but before you even do that, you really need to look at this and say, okay, what, just from a buying and selling, from a supply and demand standpoint, what has really happened here? And what's really happened is the stock ramped up huge. In prior pullbacks here, there's always been some support. There's always been some buying at a little bit lower level. Here, same deal. You know, we can go back further. We find the same thing here and here. Okay, well, this time around, I'm talking here. I'm not talking about down there. But this time around, there wasn't demand to push the stock higher. Instead, it stayed right at this critical point, right at the 200-day moving average before for a very short period of time, and then got crushed. So what we know is, and this is a no. This is not a I think really strongly. No, this is a no. We know that institutions are selling this stock. Why do we know this? Because volume is only this high if institutions are taking action. And so then you say, well, what action are they taking? Well, they're selling. And you might say, well, how do we know that they're selling? Maybe they're all buying. No, if they were buying, the price would be up. We know they're selling because the price goes down. It's very, very logical and pretty darn obvious. But like a lot of things, it's only really truly obvious after maybe it's pointed out to you. So I'm pointing that out now. So we know institutions are selling. We also know that short sellers are selling. Why? Because short sellers tend to short when institutions are selling, unless they're taking the contrary side. In other words, maybe they're shorting into a really, really big uptrend because they believe that the market is mispricing something. But here, that's not the case. And why do we know that? Well, because the stock's moving lower. Again, they're shorting. Institutions are selling. So if you are looking for a bounce here, we're still on the weekly chart. If you're looking for a bounce here, you have to understand that and say, okay, well, when I zoom into the daily chart, what I'm probably not going to see is a massive opportunity to buy at 292 and sell when the stock gets back up to 365 or so. Why? Because you're not going to get the same demand to push the stock higher as you did before. Why do we know this? Well, because if that demand was still there, then don't you think that demand would have been sufficient to stop the decline? So, to make another very, very obvious statement that is a lot of times only obvious after it's pointed out to you, if there was sufficient demand to push the stock from 290 up to 365, if there was sufficient demand, back here to do it, and there was not sufficient demand to keep it up here, then why would you believe, why would I believe, why would we think that that demand all of a sudden will reappear. And now we're going to push the stock up higher. There's no logical reason to believe that. There's probably a lot of illogical reasons to believe that. Hope comes into mind. Golly gee, I need a good trade comes into mind, or comes to mind. But the bottom line is there's not enough demand to push the stock up very far, because if there was, again, then that demand would not have allowed the stock to fall that low. Now, with that said, let's get to the rest of the chart. Okay, we see that that was not the, that actually what I just said is true. Don't be too impressed with me. I already know what this chart looked like. But now when we see this, what are we doing here? Okay, well, let's say we bought here, or maybe we bought here. I don't know. Maybe you waited to buy. Again, you're expecting just a small bounce. You're not expecting this kind of move. This is all we got. And now Chipotle's moving lower. So what's the trade? In my view, the trade is if you bought here, you really need to sell. You just sell, take your profits. If you bought up here, you really need to sell. Take your losses. Because in my view, if Chipotle comes back down to 277.26, this low, and falls below that level, you're probably going to see additional downside, because this is the chart that controls. We've seen this in other stocks, guys. When the trounce is really big and the bounce is really weak, then a lot of times you're going to see additional downside. Chipotle, if you've been there, you know what? They have corn tortillas. They also have a bunch of corn in their stuff. Prices are going up. Now, the good news is price of beef, probably chicken as well, is going down. Why? Well, because farmers are selling their livestock sooner than they normally would just to pay the bills. But what's that going to mean for next year? It's going to mean that the price of beef and chicken, I think that's a correlation too, I'd imagine so, are going to be going up next year. So this year, the price of corn is up quite a bit. Next year, the price of meat is going to be up quite a bit. And I doubt that corn's going to be down lower than it was. Really, it'll be down a little bit. But the bottom line is the very ingredients that make up Chipotle's product are under pressure from below. We're ultimately going to see higher prices. That cuts into their profits. So this is not, in my view, and I like Chipotle, but I don't like the stock right now. And if I did like the stock, let me put it this way. If the stock comes down to about maybe $200 or so, then I may like it again. But perhaps not, because it's got a long way to fall. Okay, that's it. Members, get over to the strategy session.